what comes to mind for me would be the best way to start to do exposure in this area would be to set a time on it. So rather than trying to get through all your steps faster, you want to actually do them in the same order as usual, but set a time for when it has to be done so that you have to live with the possibility that you miss some of the steps.
Okay.
Okay. Because sometimes when people try to do exposure around this, they just try to do everything faster.
I see. Yeah. Okay.
And then that will eventually backfire.
Right.
This would be with cleaning or with academic or work situations. Sometimes people recognize that they're perfectionistic and then they say like, okay, I'm just going to do everything really fast, but the same kind of way. And then that just gets very stressful. And then they stop trying to it like creates the same pattern of procrastination because it's so hard to maintain the standard of excellence. And one other really important point here is that in challenging clinical perfectionism, we're not saying that you have to drop your standards. So I still want you to excel and have high standards. We're saying clinical perfectionism is a problem of strategy, not outcome. So the desire for a certain outcome is totally fine. It's just the strategy of trying to do it perfectly, having mistakes be catastrophic, working at something until it feels a certain way, only working on something if it feels a certain way, focusing on how high the stakes would be if things didn't go a certain way. All of those are examples of thinking that contributes to perfectionism that makes it less likely for you to achieve your goals.
That makes complete sense. Yeah.
So the other concept that's, I think, relevant here in terms of overcoming procrastination, in addition to kind of having a different mindset where rather than doing something perfectly, you're trying to do things flexibly, and trying to work on flexibility as a goal in its own sake. So everything is a learning opportunity. It's okay for things to be imperfect. If I'm doing something and it feels uncomfortable, I'm actually building like a flexible psychological muscle, and it's good for its own sake. Those are some parts of the mindset. The other thing is to prepare for the urge to procrastinate. And in that case, I think you want to think about anticipatory anxiety. So that's the anxiety you feel before you start something. And if you have years of procrastination on something, of course, you're going to have anticipatory anxiety before you get started because you're used to getting in a spot where you have to do things perfectly or you're going to face a lot of self-criticism. And that's aversive because it's painful. So the important thing to recognize with anticipatory anxiety is that it's a feeling, not a fact or prediction. And it's more of an indication of what's happened in the past than what's going to happen in the future. So if you notice that you have anticipatory anxiety, you just want to allow those sensations to be in your body, label it, and keep moving forward. And if you can get in the habit of tolerating anticipatory anxiety and then going into the situation and approaching it flexibly with willingness to make mistakes and willingness to be imperfect, over time, you're going to have less anticipatory anxiety because you can trust yourself that you can get started. Does that make sense?
That makes complete sense. And I think that I definitely historically and even still struggle to the sense, to some degree, around the sense that if I have the feeling, it will become the outcome. So like the sense that like anticipatory anxiety is almost like predicting what's going to happen. So I think that's something that I definitely have learned through being in therapy, but it's still something that I have to keep working on because it is definitely second nature for me to have a feeling and assume that like an outcome is going to come out of it.
Yes, I think that's a very common experience. And I think some people get frustrated when they feel anticipatory anxiety, especially if it's something that they want to be excited for. So it's something that you want to work on or you feel excited for, but so for instance, if you're getting dinner with friends and you're excited for that event, but you have anticipatory anxiety about how long it's going to take you to get ready, that can feel daunting because it feels like it might ruin the event. And so just the framework you want to approach that with is it's okay to feel anticipatory anxiety. this is, again, an indication of my past, not what's happening in the future. And if I practice having compassion and flexibility as I approach my anticipatory anxiety, I won't always have that same feeling as I'm getting ready for work or for the social event or whatever I'm planning to do.
Yeah, that makes sense.